Hello, good evening, and welcome back to another episode of Minds on Guard, where we're learning how to guard our minds against all of the manipulations, attacks, and attempts at thought and behavior control that we come under today here in the 21st century. In tonight's video, I'm going to continue our examination of Psyops by taking a brief look at why they happen to be so effective in today's world. Now, that's not to say they were less effective in the past, but rather that today, the sheer volume of psychological attacks that we experience is unprecedented. There are a few reasons for why this is the case, some being rooted in the technological sphere, some in the educational sphere, while others are in the sociological. What I want to focus our attention on tonight is located mainly in the psychological and cognitive spheres of our daily life. More specifically, the ways in which psyops create, deepen, trigger, and in general operate through cognitive dissonance. As we've learned, psyops are ultimately a form of warfare centered around the various narratives which permeate our culture and society. Now, these narratives are to be understood as particular points of view which are deeply tied to the people's varying layers of what they consider to be their identity. This is true both of individuals as well as groups, and when it comes to narrative warfare, the more layers of identity that any story is able to elicit a triggering reaction, the more effective it will be with respect to furthering any narrative. Recall that stories are the means by which narratives are delivered to people. The information that they contain is what does the communicating. What we want to be able to do is to identify the different layers of information contained in any story so that we can rightly parse out what is true insofar as what is being delivered is aligning with reality, and then what is in fact outright manipulation. This can be quite difficult in today's media landscape. I'm sure you're all aware and agree that what we see in the news media, on social media, and in various print sources is hardly able to be considered reliable when it comes to telling the plain truth of any series of events. We are deep in the age of spin, and it's often safer to assume that any initial report or story in the media has some kind of significant falsehood contained in the story that we're given. One of the main drivers for why this is so is the fact that there is an incredible amount of money being made solely on people's engagement with the various media outlets, specifically those on the internet. The data that is being gathered on every click, like, share, comment, and even more personal interactions has created a market where every human on Earth who has access to an internet connection is now a target for profit based on their cognitive and biometric data. Our thoughts and behaviors are becoming, if not already, the largest source of capital on the planet. This means that anyone who operates in this new market in any business capacity whatsoever is turning their focus toward ways of engaging people so that they can gain meaningful data on what will increase profits and access to more of the same. What this has set up, particularly in the news and social media, is the perfect arena to implement the techniques of narrative warfare in ways that were previously unthinkable prior to the technological innovation that has occurred in the last few decades. The aim is to keep people hooked on the content so that the data streams keep rolling in and the revenues climb higher and higher. One of the main ways this is done is by targeting the natural tendency in all humans toward cognitive dissonance. This is one of many important reasons to examine this topic so we can continue to guard our minds from dangerous thinking errors. And to do this, we're going to return to a favorite resource of this channel, the Frontisterium Substack by Brian Shane Roberts. Now let's dig in. For those who are new to this channel, The Frontisterium is a series of essays that are aimed at helping people think more clearly, more precisely, more honestly, and without the myriad of errors that happen to nearly all people in the world today. It's written by a very deep thinker and person who has worked extremely hard to develop a system for parsing out and understanding reality as accurately as he can, Mr. Brian Shane Roberts. And I find it to be an incredibly deep and invaluable resource for what we're doing here with this channel. If you've not yet checked out the Substack, I highly encourage you to do so right away. I'll link the first essay on cognitive dissonance in the description box below the video. In that essay, Roberts describes a basic model for understanding how and why cognitive dissonance occurs in human thinking and behaviors. I'll be reading excerpts from the essay throughout the rest of this video. There's a great deal more that I'm not able to include tonight, so please do yourself a favor and read the whole thing for the deepest level of discussion. The model, stated simply, is as follows. One has a cognition, I don't want to do X, and one has the behavior, I am doing X. Next, the desire for inner harmony is a driver for attempted resolution of the cognitive dissonance one is experiencing. The drive to hold our inner world via our attitudes and behaviors in harmony or peaceful equilibrium is known as the principle of cognitive consistency. And there are three noted causes of cognitive dissonance. 1. Forced compliance behavior, 2. Decision-making, and 3. Effort. As Mr. Roberts notes, the model he describes is pretty simple, but it actually provides the framework for a great deal of understanding when we're able to apply it to our own thinking. With respect to Psyops and how they operate in the world around us, this is absolutely the case. If you've seen the previous videos on this subject, you'll be able to recognize a couple of terms right away which tie in directly to this issue, that being harmony and dissonance. These two states are constantly made to be in conflict within our thinking, both by outside forces and from within our own minds. In the text, we read, "It is a fact that we humans constantly try to resolve reality into binary states and then to a single state or unary state. The mechanism through which we do this can be exclusively incorrect. When confronted with two seemingly contradictory states, we tend to move from the place of emotion and, therefore, try to resolve what A. need not be resolved, B. cannot be resolved, C. should not be resolved, D. can be resolved but cannot be resolved through the means of approach, E. can be resolved and is not functional to resolve due to the factors that I will introduce within the writings to come. The desire to resolve can come from many places, not limited to, but including curiosity, obsession, fear, justice, bravery, and cowardice. These places are meant to be understood as states of thought within the individual or collective. What matters at this moment is that we awaken to the unique desire possessed by our species to resolve this vast complex of interwoven strands of cause and effect matrices into something that ultimately presents itself as the choice of yes or no, good or bad, right or wrong. The point is that the desire to bring reality down to our current level, rather than to attempt to rise up to its operational level within the architecture of the problem set, generates many errors of thought and is itself a grievous error of thought. Whenever I have spoken about our need to deal with reality as it is, rather than how we wished it to be, this is part of what I'm speaking about. There's obviously a lot more going on, but this phenomenon of trying to resolve and bring complex problems down to a level where we're able to first recognize and feel in control of the emotional reactivity that we all have is a major block in being able to accurately understand the things we see, do, and go through in the world. Most things, especially when it comes to narrative warfare, should not be viewed in black and white terms of good and bad and right and wrong. There is always more to see and more to look for in the stories that were told in the media and the things that spread online. One important question that should always be asked is what is not being said. It may be in the silence where we can find the information that would expose the lies and attempts to keep us distracted to the real aims of the stories that we're being told. When it comes to Psyops and the narrative warfare we experience every day, there is, baked into the design of each and every operation, a component which necessarily engenders cognitive dissonance in those who are exposed to the op. By targeting the layers of identity, the crafters of the Psyop are working at the subconscious level of any person or group and are taking advantage of the thinking errors that are described in the Frontisterium essay. In a way, these sorts of attacks act as a kind of thought inception by triggering our desire to resolve whatever is causing the dissonance that we feel when we're met with some kind of story or message. Roberts mentions a version of these which he calls illusory paradoxes, in that they are created by our thinking errors rather than being existent as a result of an organic outcropping of the physical fundamentals or conceptual thought space fundamentals of the universe. What needs to be understood is just why this happens at all, so that we can get on top of this phenomenon within our own thinking and stop the spread of these errors from taking place in our lives and those with whom we engage. This will help greatly in identifying psyops before they have the chance to manipulate our thinking and our behavior. We read again in the essay, "It is my assertion that the driver for inner harmony, while factual in that there is a drive, is a misidentification in most cases in that it is not true harmony one is seeking. The person in question may experience the feeling of harmony. However, it is not harmony, but rather a psychic placeholder that is, in fact, the belief that due to the choices made, they have fortified themselves in such a way as to become unassailable. The primarily temporally obtained unassailability is what is felt as harmony. It is imperative that we grasp the fact that when harmony is not harmony, but is truthfully inner unassailability, the resolution then becomes impossible due to the locus of the false harmony, which is operationally unassailability, also in part. In short, when we attempt to resolve the dissonance in any way which does not align with reality, we are placing ourselves in a position of power over reality that we cannot actually attain, let alone sustain with any hope of success in the long run. We may get by for a while, but that will be the result of a heuristic and not a true, logically stable way to understand the world or behave in it. Now you may ask, well, what's the difference if the result is the same? And I would argue that the result is actually quite different in that one has been arrived at through complete understanding and behavior which stems from organically derived thinking, while the other is a shortcut that is likely missing key factors which would allow for anyone to know if they were truly in control of themselves or not. Where the truth provides us a solid foundation, whenever we place ourselves as unassailable, we risk falling into the traps of control mechanisms and psychological manipulation, both inner and from outside forces. The final paragraph in this essay is worth reading in full, as I think it accurately describes at least some of the state that we're in with regard to the problems created through the psychological warfare we experience today in the media and online. Further, to stop this would mean to successfully generate an environment where there is no opposition, contrary belief, contrary logic, dissenting opinion, or acceptable proof of the errancy of the power holder's inner narrative. As a direct logical consequence of the dysfunctional, delusional state of arrival, this attempt to resolve, therefore, misidentifies each component of the reality event series, and context, in favor of a delusional or generated semi-false reality. This causes the observation of the event series to be altered, often in unintended ways. The simple becomes complex rapidly once this choice is made. Due to this choice and its having been made prior to X or Y event, the cycle of justification and thereby the reframing of reality, which is the altering of reality, is constantly in play. This play is conflict generative, and it plays out from inner conflict to one-on-one conflict to maximal conflicts that involve the entirety of the planet. This concept, when understood, explains an astonishing amount of the conflict experienced by humans. My hope in reading this material with you all is that it generates a few things in our minds. One, that there is far more going on in our minds than we're readily aware of, which hopefully leads to curiosity about the other areas where we lack understanding about ourselves. Two, that the same is true about reality. And three, that this work from Mr. Roberts is helpful in the effort of keeping our minds on guard from all of the conflict and chaos that we come into contact with and generate ourselves. If you have enjoyed it or have gained any insight from this material, please leave a comment, visit his Substack, and read the rest of his essays that are available there. Do so many times. There is a lot to learn. If this can help anyone become more aware of their own cognitive dissonance and begin to fix the issues that are described, then some good will have been done indeed. I hope you found this valuable and meaningful. Until next time, stay safe, stay diligent, and stay vigilant, keeping your minds on guard.